I'm going to bring in my friends, MS Now senior White House reporter Vaughn Hilliard and co-host of MS Now's The Weeknight and former RNC chairman Michael Steele. It's good to see both of you guys. So, Vaughn, I'll start with you, my friend. So, I just finished a conversation about all of the resources that this administration is deploying abroad, possible war on the brink with Iran. But the president on his way to Rome, Georgia, to make sure the voters believe that he is focused on their cost of living and concerns here domestically. How is that message, that split screen going over?
Right. The contrast is hard to ignore here. Let us be clear. Yes, the president of the United States purview includes foreign policy and foreign affairs and diplomacy here. But if we're going to quote Marjorie Taylor Greene, whose congressional district we're standing in and is notably not here because she was effectively chose to resign after being called a traitor by Donald Trump over some of her critiques, which included the fact that she said that this White House was too focused on foreign interventionism as well as trade wars that only damaged trading relations, and kept the price of goods, particularly groceries and other goods that are shipped into the United States from overseas, high on folks like those that live here in Rome and across her district. And so I think that when you look at the promise that was made by the Trump campaign in 2024 to where we are now, I think that it is a notable differentiation, and one in which we have heard from voters over the last couple months since the president began going on these affordability type rally events in different key swing states, is that they want a greater focus on the realization and the acknowledgement that things aren't perfect within the economy. The one other note, Antonia, is the fact that all of this is happening at the same time that the president openly in the last 24 hours has suggested he could send National Guard or troops into the streets of Atlanta 7 months out from the midterm elections, and at a time in which the State Board of Election, with a majority of Trump-allied members on it, are putting forward motions that are really calling into question the extent to which Fulton County can independently run their own elections. There is a lot here at stake, and I think, if it could real fast, Antonio, I think we've got a soundbite from one Republican voter here who is talking about the elections and the security, and the fact that clearly there is a break between the way that the president views the election ahead and the way that some of his own supporters see election security in their state. Take a listen.
I think overall, security is okay. There may have been some small isolated cases, but overall, I feel like integrity in Georgia, at least, has been pretty well preserved.
And Antonio, why does Georgia matter? Well, because this is now a damn close swing state with a pivotal Senate race, among other statewide races, on the ballot this November.
So, Steele, before we go back to Georgia, I want to quickly talk with you about some of this breaking news. So we now know that it's going to be Virginia Governor Abigail Spanberger who is going to give the Democratic response to President Trump's State of the Union on Tuesday. After that address, we are going to be hearing from this new governor who certainly has been sort of part of the wave of Democrats who have owned affordability messaging. And so, Michael, I'm wondering if you can give me first just your reaction to this news that she is the voice Democrats have chosen to respond to what we'll hear the president lay out on Tuesday, and how that might connect, I guess, to this sort of way in which Democrats right now are going offense on these very affordability issues that at one point actually, were kind of in Trump's back pocket.
I think, her campaign demonstrated that at least her campaign could navigate that argument, that conversation with the voters of Virginia fairly straightforwardly. And they accepted the argument, and they made her governor. And she has been very, very strong since then and consistent in reiterating that aspect in her leadership, hitting the ground running, very much tackling the question of affordability. So leveling that up to a national level in response to the State of the Union, which will be about anything but affordability, because that will not be the takeaway that will come out of that State of the Union. It will be the diatribes and the misdirections and the defensiveness of Donald Trump that will prevail. And so it will be someone with a very strong clarion call that resonated with swing voters in Virginia, making that case across the nation to those very same type of swing voters. So I think it's very smart on their part to have a fresh face, a fresh voice from the Democratic Party representing sort of the new edge of Democratic leadership, the diversity in all that means in terms of their ability to reach voters, being on the front line of that conversation.
You know, one question I have for you about what's unfolding behind Vaughn right now, Chairman Steele, is, you know, kind of this idea of, is this a part of his affordability tour? Is this leg of the tour all a little bit too late? I mean, people are already voting in primaries. In Georgia, in particular, there's sort of a clown car of candidates. Many people think we might be headed for a runoff there. And affordability has been on the minds of Americans for months now. It sort of seems like the president has weirdly been late to this party. You're right to spell out that whether it's in State of the Union or what we might hear from him later today, he tends to kind of meander, to put it diplomatically a bit. But even if he stays on message and comes aggressively with a story to tell about the administration's work for Americans, for their pocket, their kitchen table issues, is it too late to some extent?
You know, it is. Look, the one thing that I've learned in my years of politics is that voters will always give you the signal when they're tired, they're bored, they're excited. They want to move in a new direction. And how you pick up on those signals as a politician, as a party, matters. And the timing matters. And so there is when you're in the negative side of that conversation with voters, when your numbers are dropping, the grace that they give you is slipping, you have to respond then. You can't wait. And for some time now, both inside and outside of Washington, Republicans have been trying to get Donald Trump specifically to lean into the affordability narrative, to lean into the various strengths that he had coming into the latter half of his first year. And he squandered that and has gotten caught up in a lot of other gotcha type of politics. And so that grace is now waned. And it's harder to make the case to those voters because they've stopped listening. That was reflected in what you heard in that voter from Georgia about elections. It's like, well, our system works. I don't know what everybody's scrambling around about. So that tells you that narrative with the Republican voter is over. They're not believing that there's fraud in their state. Because when they did, you didn't take advantage of it. When there was a conversation around affordability, you didn't take advantage of it. So now to come back in, you know, a few weeks out for a special election to try to convince them otherwise is going to be a very hard sell to make.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are tired of reliving 2020 and relitigating that, particularly in Georgia. And then everything you just spelled out is what Marjorie Taylor Greene was begging him to pay attention to for months and months and months before they went through this entire divorce. Michael Steele, Vaughn Hilliard, great to see both of you guys. Thank you.